Hello everyone. This is a true story shared anonymously. It's a deeply personal story, one that still carries a sting even after all this time. It's about love, betrayal, and the harsh lessons life sometimes throws our way. If you find this story meaningful, please support me by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It really helps me a lot to know these stories resonate and that I'm not alone in these experiences. Let me take you back to a time when I thought I had it all, a time before everything I believed in crumbled to dust. We met, as many couples do, through mutual friends. Sarah, her name was Sarah, walked into my life like a sunrise after a long night. I remember the first time I saw her. It was at a small gathering, a friend's birthday barbecue. She was laughing, her head thrown back, sunlight catching the gold flecks in her eyes. It was a laugh that was both carefree and genuine, and it drew me in instantly. We started talking, and hours melted away like minutes. It wasn't just her beauty, though she was undeniably beautiful with her warm smile and intelligent eyes. It was something deeper, a connection that felt instant and profound. We talked about everything and nothing, from our dreams for the future to the silly things that annoyed us about our day. I felt understood in a way I hadn't before, seen for who I truly was, flaws and all. Dating Sarah felt like breathing fresh air after being underwater. Everything was exciting, new, and effortless. We shared a similar sense of humor, a love for old movies, and a passion for exploring new places. We'd spend hours wandering through bookstores, getting lost in conversations over coffee, or simply holding hands as we walked along the beach at sunset. Each moment felt precious, like a scene from a movie I never wanted to end. I fell in love with her quickly, deeply, and completely. It was the kind of love you read about in novels, the kind that makes you believe in soulmates. And she, or so I believed, felt the same way. Our wedding day was, without a doubt, the happiest day of my life. Surrounded by family and friends, we promised forever to each other. I looked into her eyes as we exchanged vows, and I saw a future filled with love, laughter, and unwavering commitment. The reception was a blur of joy, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. We were the picture-perfect couple, the envy of many, or so it seemed from the outside. Those early years of our marriage were truly golden. We built a home together, not just a house, but a sanctuary filled with shared memories and dreams. We'd spend weekends cooking together, experimenting with new recipes, often ending up in fits of laughter when something went wrong. We'd travel, exploring new cities and cultures, always hand in hand, always together. We supported each other through thick and thin, through job changes, family illnesses, and the everyday stresses of life. I was her rock and she was mine. Or at least that's how I saw it. Intimacy wasn't just physical. It was emotional, intellectual, spiritual. We shared our deepest fears and our wildest hopes. We knew each other's secrets, the ones we hadn't told anyone else. We were best friends, lovers, partners in every sense of the word. I truly believed we had built something unbreakable, a fortress of love that could withstand any storm. We talked about having children, about growing old together, about all the adventures life had in store for us. Our future stretched out before us, bright and promising, filled with endless possibilities. Looking back, those memories are like shards of glass, beautiful in their own way but sharp and painful to touch. It's strange how slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. Like a subtle change in the weather, you don't notice it at first, but then you realize the air feels different, the light is less warm. The first sign, and it was so minor I almost dismissed it, was a slight withdrawal. Sarah started spending more time on her phone, especially in the evenings. She'd be scrolling and typing, sometimes with a small, secretive smile playing on her lips, but when I'd ask her what she was doing, she'd just shrug it off, saying it was nothing, or just work emails. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Everyone uses their phones a lot, right? Work was demanding for her, I reasoned. She was probably just catching up. Then there were the changes in our conversations. Our deep, meaningful talks started to become less frequent, replaced by superficial exchanges about the day's events. She seemed less interested in my day, less engaged when I talked about my work or my hobbies. It felt like a subtle distance was growing between us, a thin veil I couldn't quite penetrate. When I tried to initiate deeper conversations, she'd sometimes seem distracted or impatient, cutting them short with a quick, "I'm tired," or "Can we talk about this later?" And later never seemed to come. Our intimate moments also started to dwindle. It wasn't a sudden stop, but a gradual fading. The spontaneous touches, the lingering kisses, the nights of passionate lovemaking became less frequent, replaced by routine and perfunctory gestures. When I tried to be more affectionate, she sometimes seemed resistant. Not overtly rejecting, but just less enthusiastic. She'd attribute it to stress, to being tired, to the pressures of her job. And again I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Love, I thought, had its ebbs and flows. Every relationship goes through phases, right? This was just a phase. We'd get through it. Another subtle shift was her increased irritability. Little things that never used to bother her started to set her off. She became quicker to anger, more critical of me, more easily frustrated. A misplaced sock, a slightly late dinner, a comment I made that she misinterpreted, all these could trigger disproportionate reactions. I walked on eggshells, trying to avoid upsetting her, trying to understand what was causing this change, but she wouldn't open up. When I asked if something was wrong, she'd snap back, "Nothing's wrong. Why are you always making a big deal out of everything?" I started to feel like I was constantly doing something wrong, constantly failing to meet her expectations, though I didn't even know what those expectations were anymore. Perhaps the most unsettling change was her increasing secrecy. She started being less forthcoming about her plans, her whereabouts. If I asked where she was going after work, she'd give vague answers, out with a friend, or just running errands. She became more protective of her phone, always keeping it face down, taking it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. She changed her passwords on her phone and laptop, something she had never done before. It wasn't anything concrete, no smoking gun, just a collection of small, unsettling changes, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit, creating a picture that was blurry and indistinct, but undeniably off. Looking back, these were the first whispers of doubt, the early tremors before the earthquake. But blinded by love and trust, I chose to ignore them, to rationalize them away, clinging to the beautiful memories of our past, hoping that whatever was changing was just a temporary blip, a minor detour on our long and happy road together. I was so wrong. The subtle whispers of doubt started to grow louder, harder to ignore. The changes in Sarah became more pronounced, less easily explained away. The distance between us widened like a crack in a foundation, slowly but surely threatening to split our lives apart. Her phone became an almost constant companion, clutched in her hand as if it held the secrets of the universe. The secretive smiles, the hushed whispers when she thought I wasn't listening, the way she'd quickly minimize her screen if I entered the room, these things started to gnaw at me, planting seeds of suspicion in my mind. One evening, she told me she was going out for dinner with a girlfriend from work. She mentioned the name, someone I'd vaguely heard of but never met. It seemed normal enough, but something about her demeanor felt off. She was a little too eager to tell me, a little too casual, almost as if she was trying to convince me, and perhaps herself, that it was just a harmless dinner with a friend. Later that night, after she had left, a nagging feeling wouldn't let me rest. It was a feeling I'd been suppressing for weeks, months even, but it was now bubbling to the surface, suspicion. I found myself drawn to her phone. It was lying on the bedside table, face down, silently mocking me with its secrets. I knew it was wrong, a violation of her privacy, a betrayal of the trust we were supposed to share. But the need to know, the gnawing anxiety was overwhelming. It felt like a physical ache in my chest, a constant whisper in my ear, urging me to look, to find out the truth. I hesitated, battling with my conscience. Was I really going to stoop to this? Snoop through my wife's phone? The thought made me feel sick, but the alternative, living in this fog of suspicion, this constant uncertainty, felt even worse. With trembling hands, I picked up her phone. It was locked, of course. She had changed her password recently, claiming it was for security reasons. Another small red flag I had chosen to ignore. I tried a few obvious passwords, birthdays, anniversaries, but none of them worked. Defeated, I almost put it back down. Maybe I was wrong, maybe it was all in my head. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But then, something made me try again. I thought back to our early days, to the silly inside jokes we shared, the nicknames we had for each other. On a whim, I typed in a word, a pet name I used to call her, a name we hadn't used in years. And to my utter shock, the phone unlocked. My heart pounded in my chest. It felt like I was crossing a point of no return, stepping into a darkness I wasn't sure I was ready to face. I told myself I was just looking for reassurance, for something to prove my suspicions wrong. But deep down, I knew. I knew I was about to find something I didn't want to see. I started with her messages. There were a lot of work-related texts, group chats, the usual everyday chatter. I scrolled through them, my anxiety building with each message, finding nothing incriminating, nothing out of the ordinary. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was just my insecurities playing tricks on me. Relief started to wash over me, a fragile hope that I had been mistaken. But then I saw it. A message thread, buried deep within her inbox, under a generic contact name, a name I didn't recognize. My fingers trembled as I clicked on it. The messages were intimate, flirtatious, Then, increasingly explicit. My blood ran cold. I scrolled further and further, each message a hammer blow to my heart. They were filled with pet names, inside jokes, details about their secret meetings, their stolen moments. It was all there, laid bare in black and white, undeniable, irrefutable proof of her betrayal. The messages spanned months, detailing a clandestine relationship that had been going on right under my nose, while I had been oblivious, trusting, loving. I felt sick to my stomach. The room started to spin. It was like the floor had dropped out from under me, leaving me in free fall. My mind raced, trying to process what I was reading. Who was this person? How long had this been going on? Had our entire marriage been a lie? The messages painted a picture of a woman I didn't recognize, a woman capable of such deception, such cruelty. It was Sarah, and yet it wasn't. It was like looking at a distorted reflection, a grotesque caricature of the woman I loved. I spent what felt like hours scrolling through those messages, each one a fresh stab of pain. They detailed romantic dinners, secret rendezvous, whispered promises, all the things I thought we shared, now twisted and defiled by her infidelity. I saw pictures too. Pictures of them together, smiling, laughing, holding each other close. Pictures taken in places we had been together, places that held cherished memories for me, now tainted by her betrayal. It was like she was deliberately trying to erase me from our shared history, replacing me with him. The more I read, the more the reality of her betrayal sunk in. It wasn't just a flirtation, a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a full-blown affair, a calculated deception that had been going on for months, maybe even longer. And the arrogance of it, the audacity to carry on this double life while pretending to be my loving wife, it was breathtaking. I felt like a fool, a naive idiot who had been completely blind to the truth, while everyone else probably saw it coming. Have you ever felt that way, like everyone else knows something you don't, and you're the last one to figure it out? The initial shock started to give way to a burning anger. Anger at her, for betraying me, for lying to me, for shattering everything we had built together. Anger at myself for being so blind, so trusting, so stupid. I wanted to confront her right then and there, to scream, to shout, to demand answers. But I knew I couldn't. She was still out with her girlfriend, still living her lie. I had to wait. But the waiting was agonizing. Every minute felt like an eternity, filled with churning emotions, a toxic cocktail of pain, anger, and disbelief. I was trapped in a nightmare and I couldn't wake up. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you confront her immediately? Or would you wait, gather more information, prepare yourself for the inevitable explosion? She came home late that night, later than she had said she would. She walked in, her cheeks flushed, a little too bright, a little too forced. She smiled at me, a smile that now felt like a mask, a carefully constructed facade hiding the truth. "Hey honey," she said, her voice a little too cheerful, a little too high-pitched. "Had a great time. Just what I needed." She didn't know, not yet, that I knew. And in that moment, watching her play act, watching her lie so effortlessly, something inside me snapped. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, my eyes burning into hers. She seemed to sense something was wrong, her forced smile faltering slightly. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice now laced with a hint of nervousness. "You look pale." Pale. I felt like I was about to explode. But I held it in, barely wanting to savor this moment, this agonizing prelude to the confrontation. I simply gestured towards the bedside table, where her phone still lay, unlocked, open to the message thread that had ripped my world apart. She followed my gaze, her eyes widening in slow-motion realization. The color drained from her face, replaced by a ghostly white. The forced cheerfulness vanished, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated panic. She knew. She knew I knew. For a moment there was silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that hung in the air, thick with unspoken accusations and devastating truths. Then she stammered, her voice barely a whisper, What is this?" As if she didn't know. As if she could still try to deny it, to lie her way out of this mess. The audacity was astounding. "Don't play games, Sarah," I said, my voice cold, flat, devoid of emotion. "I know." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. "I read your messages. All of them." Her eyes welled up with tears, tears that now seemed fake, manipulative, designed to elicit sympathy, to deflect blame. "It's not what you think," she choked out, the classic line of the guilty, the desperate plea of someone caught red-handed. It was almost comical if it wasn't so utterly heartbreaking. "Oh really? Then tell me, Sarah," I said, my voice rising slightly, the anger starting to bubble to the surface. "Tell me what it is. Tell me who this Mark is and why you've been exchanging these loving messages with him for months. Tell me why you've been lying to my face, betraying my trust, destroying our marriage. The words tumbled out, fueled by weeks of suppressed pain and anger. She started to cry, the tears flowing freely now, but they didn't move me. They just felt like another performance, another act in her elaborate deception. It just happened, she sobbed, her voice muffled by her tears. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Just happened? I repeated, incredulous. Affairs don't just happen, Sarah. They are choices. A series of choices. You chose to lie to me. You chose to betray me. You chose him. Don't insult my intelligence by saying it just happened. My voice was shaking now, the anger threatening to explode. She tried to touch me, to reach out and take my hand, but I recoiled, pulling away as if burned. Please listen to me, she pleaded, her voice desperate. It's complicated. It's not what you think. There it was again, it's not what you think. The ultimate gaslighting phrase, the attempt to minimize, to deflect, to shift the blame. Complicated? I scoffed. What's complicated about it, Sarah? You cheated on me. You had an affair. That's not complicated. That's betrayal. Pure and simple. The dam finally broke. The anger, the pain, the hurt, all poured out in a torrent of words, accusations, and raw emotion. I confronted her with the details from the messages, the dates, the places, the intimate details she had shared with this other man. Each detail was like a knife twist, each revelation a fresh wave of pain. She tried to interrupt, to defend herself, to explain, but I wouldn't let her. I needed her to hear the truth, to hear the devastation she had caused, to understand the depth of her betrayal. As I spoke, I watched her crumble. Her tears turned from manipulative to genuine, her sobs racking her body. She confessed, finally admitting everything. The affair had started months ago with a colleague at work. It had started as just friendship, then emotional connection, and then inevitably physical intimacy. She claimed it was a mistake, that she regretted it, that she still loved me. But the words felt hollow, empty, meaningless in the face of her betrayal. The pain was unbearable, a physical ache in my chest that made it hard to breathe. It felt like my heart was being ripped out of my chest, torn to shreds. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was overshadowed by a profound sadness, a deep sense of loss. I had lost her, not just physically but emotionally, spiritually. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was gone, replaced by this stranger who had betrayed me so completely. Trust, the very foundation of our relationship, was shattered, pulverized into dust. Everything I believed in, everything I held dear, was suddenly called into question. Were the past years a lie? Were all those happy memories tainted by her deception? Had she ever truly loved me? The questions swirled in my mind, unanswered, unanswerable, adding to the torment. I felt numb, disoriented, like I was walking through a dream, or rather, a nightmare. The world around me seemed to blur, to lose focus. I couldn't think straight, couldn't process what was happening. It was too much, too sudden, too devastating. My emotional breakdown wasn't dramatic, not filled with screaming or shouting. It was quiet, internal, a slow, agonizing collapse. I felt myself shutting down, withdrawing into myself, trying to protect myself from the overwhelming pain. It was like my soul was trying to escape my body, to flee from the unbearable reality. I just wanted it to stop, for the pain to end, for the nightmare to be over. But it wasn't a dream. It was real. And it was my life. The confrontation stretched late into the night. Emotions ebbed and flowed like a violent tide, from raw anger to gut-wrenching sadness, from bitter accusations to tearful apologies. Sarah's confession was a messy, tangled web of excuses, justifications, and self-pity. She blamed her unhappiness, she blamed my supposed emotional unavailability, a convenient deflection considering her months of secrecy. She even tried to subtly blame me for not paying enough attention to her needs. It was a masterclass in shifting responsibility, in avoiding accountability. But amidst the tears and the excuses, one thing became chillingly clear. She wasn't truly remorseful for the betrayal itself, but rather for getting caught. Her regret seemed to stem more from the consequences of her actions than from the actions themselves. She was sorry she had hurt me, yes, but only because it meant our comfortable life, our social standing, our shared future was now in jeopardy. The genuine remorse, the deep understanding of the damage she had inflicted, was missing. Then came the ultimatum, the arrogant declaration that still echoes in my mind, cold and cutting even now. After hours of arguing, pleading, and confessing, when the reality of divorce loomed large, when she realized that her actions might actually have real-world consequences, she changed tactics. Her tone hardened, her voice became sharp, and she delivered the blow that finally shattered any remaining illusion I had about the woman I thought I knew. "Listen to me," she declared, her voice laced with a chilling arrogance. "If you file for divorce, I'll leave you without a penny." The words hung in the air, stark and menacing. It was a threat pure and simple. She went on to elaborate, reminding me of her connections, her resources, her ability to make my life miserable, if I dared to challenge her. She spoke of lawyers, of settlements, of dragging me through a messy public divorce, leaving me financially and emotionally ruined. It was a calculated, cold-blooded attempt at intimidation, designed to keep me trapped, to silence my pain, to ensure her own comfort and security. In that moment, staring at her, listening to her arrogant threats, something shifted within me. The last vestiges of love, of hope, of any lingering attachment I might have held on to died. It was like a switch flipped. The pain remained, the sadness lingered, but the confusion, the doubt, the internal conflict, they vanished. Clarity emerged from the fog of betrayal. I saw her for who she truly was, stripped bare of all pretense, all illusion. And what I saw was not the woman I had married, not the woman I had loved, but a stranger, cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of empathy. Her threat, intended to scare me into submission, had the opposite effect. It didn't break me, it liberated me. It solidified my decision, made it absolute, irreversible. I knew with unwavering certainty that I would not stay with this woman. Not for financial security, not for social appearances, not for any reason whatsoever. My self-respect, my sanity, my very soul demanded that I walk away, that I escape this toxic web of deceit and manipulation. The breaking point wasn't just the infidelity itself, devastating as that was. It was her arrogance, her lack of genuine remorse, her willingness to weaponize our shared history, our marriage, against me. It was the realization that she saw me not as a partner, not as a loved one, but as an obstacle, an inconvenience to be dealt with, to be controlled, to be exploited. That arrogant declaration, "I'll leave you without a penny," was the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. It was the moment I knew unequivocally that there was no future for us, no possibility of reconciliation, no path forward but separation. The rest of the night was a blur. We argued some more, mostly about practicalities, about finances, about the logistics of separation. She continued to try to manipulate me, to guilt-trip me, to scare me, but her words no longer held any power. I had seen behind the mask and I was no longer afraid. I was hurt, deeply wounded, but also strangely resolute. I had made my decision. Divorce was inevitable. The future was uncertain, daunting even, but it was also, for the first time in a long time, filled with a sense of possibility. The possibility of healing, of rebuilding, of finding peace, even happiness, again. That night I slept in the spare room. It felt symbolic, a physical separation mirroring the emotional chasm that now separated us. As I lay there, sleepless, staring at the ceiling, I thought about our future. Or rather, the lack thereof. The decision to leave was agonizing, terrifying even. It meant dismantling our life, facing financial uncertainty, dealing with the social stigma of divorce, and navigating the emotional minefield of separation. It was a daunting prospect, but the alternative, staying in a loveless, toxic marriage, with a woman who had betrayed me so deeply and so callously, was unthinkable. I chose the pain of separation over the slow, agonizing death of my soul. And in that choice I found a strange kind of strength, a quiet determination to survive, to heal, and to build a new life for myself, a life free from deceit, free from manipulation, free from her. The future was uncertain, yes, but it was also mine to create. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. The initial shock and anger gave way to a deep, gnawing sadness, a profound sense of loss. It wasn't just the loss of my marriage, it was the loss of the future I had envisioned, the life I had built, the woman I had loved. It felt like grieving a death, the death of a dream, the death of a part of myself. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of her, of us, of the life we had shared. Our home felt empty, cold, haunted by memories. Simple things like cooking dinner alone, watching a movie by myself, waking up to an empty bed, were constant reminders of my loss. The divorce process was messy and painful, just as she had threatened. She was indeed resourceful, and she did try to make things difficult, dragging out the proceedings, contesting every point, trying to bleed me dry financially. But I stood my ground. I refused to be intimidated, refused to be bullied. I found a good lawyer, someone who understood my situation and fought for me. It was a long and arduous battle, but eventually I prevailed. I didn't emerge unscathed financially or emotionally, but I emerged free. Healing wasn't linear, it was a roller coaster of emotions with good days and bad days, moments of progress and moments of relapse. There were days when I felt strong, confident, like I was finally moving on. And then there were days when the pain would hit me unexpectedly, like a wave crashing over me, leaving me drowning in sadness and regret. The nights were the hardest, when the silence was deafening, and the loneliness was palpable. Sleep was often elusive, filled with nightmares and racing thoughts. Seeking help was crucial. I started therapy, something I had initially resisted, thinking I could handle it all on my own. But talking to a therapist, someone objective and non-judgmental, was incredibly helpful. It gave me a safe space to process my emotions, to unpack the trauma, to understand what had happened, and to start the long journey of healing. Therapy helped me to recognize my own patterns, my own vulnerabilities, and to develop coping mechanisms for dealing with the pain and the anger. Support from friends and family was also essential. Confiding in trusted friends, sharing my story with loved ones, was liberating. They offered comfort, encouragement, and practical help. Just knowing that I wasn't alone, that I had people who cared about me and supported me, made a huge difference. They reminded me of my worth, of my strengths, and helped me to believe in myself again, even when I doubted everything. Slowly, gradually, I started to rebuild my life. I focused on self-care, on taking care of my physical and mental health. I started exercising again, eating healthy, and prioritizing sleep. I reconnected with old hobbies, things I had neglected during my marriage. I spent time with friends, went on trips, and started to explore new interests. It was a conscious effort to reclaim my life, to rediscover myself, to find joy and meaning again, outside of the shadow of my broken marriage. Reflection on the past was also an important part of the healing process. I spent a lot of time thinking about our relationship, trying to understand where things had gone wrong, what I could have done differently, what lessons I could learn from this painful experience. I realized that I had ignored the early warning signs, that I had been too trusting, too willing to rationalize away her subtle changes in behavior. I learned the importance of paying attention to my intuition, of trusting my gut feelings, and of not being afraid to confront difficult truths. Looking back, I see now that her arrogant declaration, while incredibly hurtful at the time, was also a strange kind of gift. It stripped away any lingering illusions, any false hope, and forced me to face reality, to make a clean break and to start anew. It was a harsh lesson, learned in the most painful way possible, but it was a lesson that ultimately set me free. My advice to anyone going through something similar? First, acknowledge your pain. Don't try to suppress it, to minimize it, or to pretend it doesn't hurt. Allow yourself to grieve, to feel the full weight of your emotions. Second, seek support. Don't try to go through it alone. Talk to a therapist, confide in trusted friends and family, join a support group. There is strength in vulnerability and healing in connection. Third, prioritize self-care. Take care of your physical and mental health. Be kind to yourself. You deserve compassion and understanding, especially from yourself. Fourth, learn from the experience. Reflect on what happened, identify the lessons learned, and use them to grow and become stronger. And finally, have hope. Healing takes time, but it is possible. You can rebuild your life, you can find happiness again, you can learn to trust again even after betrayal. It won't be easy, but it is worth it. The scars of betrayal remain, a permanent reminder of the pain I endured. But they are also a testament to my resilience, to my strength, to my ability to heal and to move forward. I am not the same person I was before. I am changed, yes, marked by this experience, but also stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The future is still uncertain, but I face it with a newfound sense of self-awareness, self-respect, and a quiet hope for happiness. The road ahead may be long, but I am no longer walking in the dark. I have learned my lessons, and I am ready to build a new life, a life on my own terms, a life filled with authenticity, integrity, and genuine connection. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for listening. It means a lot to share this story, even anonymously. If you have a story to share, leave a comment or send it to me. Who knows? Your story might help someone out there who is going through something similar. Remember, you are not alone. Please like, subscribe, and share if you found this story resonated with you. It really helps support this channel. Take care of yourselves, and remember, healing is possible.